Hi, I'm Senshu, one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan offers his wisdom tirelessly with complete love and devotion. If you value these teachings, Sokuzan, the mandala of SokukoJi, please consider donating at SokukoJi.org. Thank you.
This evening's Dharma talk is titled Belief is a Wall. I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we can receive some questions and hopefully, possibly even answer some questions. When we believe something, or when we know something, different kinds of things happen in consciousness. And there's nothing wrong with believing something. I'm not saying that you wouldn't believe you're laying in bed and it's all the shades are drawn and someone comes and tells you that it's raining outside. Why wouldn't you believe them? Probably would. So that area of belief is not what I'm particularly referring to. What I'm referring to is when we believe something is true without really examining it ourselves. We believe something is true without going into that deeply. So the belief, instead of becoming something is true because we believe it, something is true because we're actually ignoring it, using the belief to not look more deeply into whatever it is. Just believing you're mad. When you're mad about something, you believe you're mad. And this is a big, big misunderstanding. If you think you're actually mad, you can live the rest of your life. Most of the world, billions of people are living under this understanding. And there are very few, there's no way I could count them, but there, from what I've seen after having been around for 80 plus years, people are controlled by their beliefs, and people are controlled by other people who can get people to believe certain things without examining them. But people will often say, well, trust me. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust me. Don't trust anybody. I'm not saying, of course, that you shouldn't get some help from somebody, have someone who's a mentor. Perhaps you even have a counselor or a therapist that you're working with. Perhaps you have a meditation instructor or teacher. You could give them the benefit of the doubt since you're listening to them, asking them questions, or getting their help, then of course. So don't misunderstand. I'm not saying shut the whole thing out, because then we're going to disbelief. Don't believe, it's a wall. Don't disbelieve, those are positions that the mind will take up in order to not look into the darkness, into the unknown. I'm encouraging you here to look into the unknown. You don't have to believe in Buddhism. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to be thwarted or controlled by belief in anything. Belief is something you think is true that you have not looked at closely. If you see what it is, if you really see what it is, you'll know what it is. You don't have to believe it. Don't believe. Don't disbelieve. Don't ignore, which is another form of belief, you could say, that something is not worth looking at, or you don't have time for that. Or you can just come to a conclusion about it. It's good enough. That'll work. This whole thing is run by, fueled by passion, aggression, and ignorance, hope and fear. Hope for something better, fear of something worse. You can't have hope without fear. You can't have fear without hope. Those are not the same, but they are not as different as they sometimes look. Just like good and evil, just like Buddhas and sentient beings, or awakening and confusion. You will not awaken if you keep looking away from the confusion for some kind of experience of awakening. This is just utter bullshit. And again, don't believe me, you find out. I can be dead next week, next month. So can you. Nothing lasts. Everything that looks like something, everything that is produced or arisen is impermanent and goes away. But who you actually are, your fundamental identity, has not arisen, so therefore it cannot disappear. Don't believe that. Don't even repeat it. Please don't teach anybody that unless you see it yourself And then don't teach anybody that unless they invite you, ask you, give you permission like this, help me. And if they do that, then I would even still be hesitant to make sure that you can see if the person is trying to look like a student rather than actually be a student. I have students who are trying to look like students. They are not students. They're trying to be. What do? Help them as much as they will let me. But quite often there are people who live right here that don't talk to me very much. And there's some people that live right here that talk to me a lot, but don't listen to what I'm saying. Should they? I don't know. Should they? Don't believe anything. I wouldn't believe that. Don't believe it. Don't disbelieve it. Don't ignore it. The title for this talk came to me, 5 minutes before I walked in here? I don't know what to talk about. Quite often I'll come in here and say, ask me some questions. What's that other part? Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. There's some kind of a toilet plunger there. It's very difficult to see in the mind stream to actually see accurately if you actually are believing something, because if you do, then it shows up as an opinion. Because if that's true, and then this is true, and that's coming, then this must be true over here. And what is that? It's just conventional logic, and it works to a point. Logic is wonderful to a point. Reason is logical and reasonable to a point. Even believing in Buddhism or believing in the words of the Buddha, don't believe anything. Consider it. It's a little bit different. You listen. The Buddha said, life is suffering. You don't have to believe that. Just stop blocking it out. Just receive whatever shows up. Receive the discomfort without covering it up with who caused it, why it shouldn't be here, what I can do about it, what somebody else could do about it. I'm not saying that you can't get out of the hailstorm. Of course, relative truth still operates quite intensely all the time. You don't need my permission to get out of the hailstorm. You don't have to stay there in a hailstorm and say, I don't believe that it's hailing on me. I'm not trying to be ridiculous about it. If you don't grasp, passion, greed, wanting control. And if you don't reject, anger, violence, hatred, you don't do any of that, well, that's good. You don't do that. But you probably are going to have to look at that to see where it comes from, how it is fueled. Because if you're not willing to do that, then you will not see how to work fundamentally in you could say, healthy, sane, uplifted, respectful way. You have to respect the confusion in order to work with it. You have to respect it. And where do you respect it at? If you can't respect it here, you're not going to respect it out there. You'll blame everybody for how you feel, one way or another. Is that wrong? It's a misunderstanding. I wouldn't necessarily call it wrong because we're just doing the best we can. Even those who are blaming others, those are, whatever, if we go into the politics of it, it's outrageously misunderstood. There's so much war going on. People murdering other people because the only way they can get rid of their suffering is to put it in an AK-47 and shoot a bunch of helpless people. The more helpless, the better. And there's the other people that want to support those weapons. It's just, politics are just nauseating after a while. And even the people who are very kind, very good, very uplifted, have very good ability to march in parades and protest. And I'm not saying that's incorrect. Maybe we all should be doing that. But if you're protesting, agreeing with something or disagreeing with something without really knowing what this is, what the fundamental problem is, then you'll just add to the confusion because it is circular. war, don't go to war, don't go to peace. I say, don't do anything. You take any position on anything, you create its opposite, and you reinforce its opposite. If it's not obvious, maybe you should face the wall for a few more years. Look somewhere where nothing is happening. Face the wall, sit down, face the carpeting, face your computer screen and shut it off. I once had a dream a long time ago, many, many years ago, where when Trungpa Rinpoche was still alive, where I had a dream where I was watching a TV screen where it had been turned off. This is in the old days when you actually had it off and on switch. And I'm watching it, and it's just a fuzz on the screen the way it used to be 30, 40 years ago or more. And I had a dream that he came up beside of me, Rinpoche did, and shut it off. He didn't even want me to watch the static. So at least I got a little bit of help from him there. Don't buy it, don't sell it, don't ignore it. Don't. There's a lot of don'ts in there. It's via negativa. You can't do it by just being wholesome and positive, because by doing that, you're covering up all the negativity. I don't care how kind, what a wonderful grin you have, or how sweet you are to your neighbors or to your children. If you're covering up the difficulty, the violence, then it shows up in different ways. Be responsible for how you feel. Whatever rises in your mind stream is your responsibility. I'm not talking about an ego that is to blame. I'm saying I'm not talking about anyone that is to blame. There is no blame. There's no credit, there's no blame. If you think there is, you'll rotate and you'll take swipes at others. Blaming has to be seen with the consciousness, with the awareness. And how do you do that? You train the consciousness by sitting down, practice shikantaza. I'm not saying there aren't probably hundreds of other ways. I don't know about those. I just know about this one. And if you're here, I have permission to tell you about it. Sit down, hold still, watch the movement in the mind, because the mind that you are watching is not separate from the mind that seems to be out there in the open, 20 feet away, 100 feet away, across the ocean, across the universe. Not separate. It is fundamentally not separate. You can awaken to that. There's no guarantee, there's no promise, there's no refunds. But there's a hell of a lot of suffering for you and for others if this isn't realized. It will go on and on and on. How do I know? I don't know. I'm probably wrong. I don't mind being right or wrong. I don't mind it. So when I say belief is a wall, I'm not saying you can get rid of the belief, but you can slow down the reinforcement of it. You can just be aware that you take something for granted that you've not really looked into. Like one of the biggest things that you believe in, that the belief holds sway over, is belief that there's somebody. When emotions arise in your mind stream, those do not arise to a person. That is a misunderstanding, one hell of a big one. And some people are willing to just take it out on their neighbor, their relatives, their children. I know I've lived with people like that, who will punish you for what they think you caused. And probably had a hand in it, but you didn't do it. You didn't create these hands. You did not create this mind. You did not. Something created this. What created it? Created it. I can't put my finger on it from the point of view of saying it's this or it's that or it's this or it's that. There's plenty of words out there that describe the impossibility of understanding it. One of them is pratitya samutpada, or dependent origination. No two things anywhere. But the illusion that there are several things is just that. It's an illusion that we are deluded by. If you see that it's an illusion, the picking and choosing comes to a halt. It doesn't mean that you won't make what someone watching you would call a decision. I think I'm going to take a nap, or I think I'm going to eat breakfast. No, I am going to skip breakfast today. So the decision quality will still show up as other, and like a person. Because if you think you're somebody, then you're going to think everybody else is somebody too. But one who realizes there isn't anyone, there's no longer at war with anything. You could even say they don't care what happens next. Why? There is no next. There's no next. It just looks that way. And it looks intensely like that. As Trungpa Rinpoche says in his sadhana, Mahamudra, vividly unreal. How can something be vividly unreal? It's like a movie. Intense. It's one that you are in it. Vividly unreal in emptiness. In other words, nothing's there. Yet there's still form. Still form. And there's still time, or the illusion of time. We've trapped that illusion in little rotating discs with, we call them hands, but they look more like various two different sizes of samurai sword. Or spider legs. That would be a good one to work. Probably tarantulas. As you've heard me say before, use an analog watch. At least you won't be sucked into the digital world without your permission. Watch things go in circles, because that's what they're doing. As soon as you look at analog ways of specifying time, you've lost the circularity and you start to go more and more into the concepts about it. Being able to handle concepts does not make you enlightened. It doesn't even give you a leg up. It might give you 3 legs down, because you're trapped by the intellect. You're trapped by your thoughts. And how do they trap you? You think there's a thinker, and I don't think so. You think there's a feeler, and I don't feel that way. I'm not saying there aren't feelings. If you actually open up to this and see what this is, your feelings can get more intense. Your thoughts can get more demanding. But you will see that they are unreal, and that there's no one thinking, there's no one feeling. And this is the only way compassion can really arise. Because other than that, it's just some kind of make-believe feeling you're trying to be compassionate for others, trying to care about others and feel about others, while ignoring this. Don't ignore this. Also, don't believe it. Don't stop the thinker. Don't stop the illusion. Don't stop the feeling. Don't. Just observe. Whatever arises needs to be seen. You need to see it. When you leave the presence of this person, or this person that's speaking leaves your presence, one thing I would like you to do, if you can, is train your mind the rest of your life. Don't stop meditating until the boundary between meditation and everyday life, or meditation and post-meditation, that boundary collapses and you are in samadhi all the time. That's not a state of mind. That is mind, but it's mind without any position. You don't need a position on anything. If I said you need a position, well, say, yeah, I'll go take your pick. It's called the 10,000 things, which is an understatement, of course. You don't need anything else. The elseness isn't even true. That is an illusion. If you see that it's an illusion, you're still on the path. You still have work to do, but you have to see it. Questions? Questions on Zoom?
Jishin bowing.
Go ahead, Jishin.
If everything is an illusion, is suffering an illusion as well?
Yes, it is. It's an illusion. Junchu.
If we think we aren't believing our thoughts, is that a belief?
Yeah. Yes. Because that any position on anything creates an aspect of consciousness called this, in this Yogacara tradition, the seventh, or the consciousness, that aspect of consciousness that's curled up into a self and is paranoid. It's just a way of talking about it. There is nothing's curling up into a ball anywhere. Consciousness always finds its own form. And when I say its own, it finds whatever it needs to continue to to be consciousness or whatever it needs to be. And even the word continue doesn't work because nothing is going anywhere. No?
Going, if a thought shows up and we see that logically it doesn't make sense or we don't believe it logically, but there's still some action coming out of the feeling of the thought, is that still a belief?
Yes. You can't do it with logic. You can get close, especially if you're really brilliant. There are scholars everywhere that have written books on this. They're available. I've read a few of them. Probably you have too. Beat the bushes and nothing is going to come out that is awakening or clarity. You have to look at the crap. You have to look into the dungeon. You have to look into the depth. You have to look into the garbage pit without flinching. You have to look at it. You have to receive it. And when it comes and it gets frightening or scary, look at it anyway. The word that I rarely use, but I can use it here just situationally, is surrender. Lose the war. Lose the war against otherness. Don't try to be something against that. Or don't even try to smush them together into some kind of fancy non-duality that you just do in your head. Everything is dual. There's no two things anywhere.
Going, if we think to ourselves, I don't believe that thought, how do we look at, the thought? Do we look at the
all
disbelief?
of it. All of it. And when you're doing that, that's actually the path. There's a ground, path, and fruition. There's a ground is suffering. That's why we're all here. Very discontent with something. That doesn't mean you're off getting ready to end your life or anything, but it's frustrating to be a living being. Because the living being that is here now is not separate from all the living beings. Consciousness finds its own form, and it finds one for 50, 60, 70 years, and then you die. Or in my case, a little bit longer. But then you come back, then that consciousness comes back, not your personality. It's more complicated. It's not we solidify ourselves into a personhood because we can't stand to not know what the hell's happening. Difficult. Need a teacher. Need someone who's, as they say, seen it, who's living it constantly without interruption. So the path quality, the ground is suffering. The path was dealing with the whole idea of belief, with clamping down or releasing, and then continue to return to the wall. So watch how the mind spontaneously latches onto something or rejects something else. Passion, aggression, and then the turning away, distraction into something else. Oh, beautiful flowers. I wonder who did that. I bet they're a communist. No, I think they've been reading too much Sylvan Muldoon. On second thought, maybe Carlos Castaneda or Philip Kapleau. I think he was a Zen master, wasn't he? You see what I'm saying? Everything is available. Everything is available. I could sit and chatter like that all day long. Why? There's nothing here stopping anything. I don't have anything to prove. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you like, what you dislike. What do I care about? I want to help you see before this body mind of yours goes back into the dirt or into the fire or into the water or into the air. I want you to see what this is. If I can help you with it, that's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm here to do. Michael.
Michael Bine, with the projections that you just put onto the flowers, What's the difference between those projections being real and unreal?
Same. They're both real and unreal. They're real in that I said them. They're unreal in that they're just fireflies. I get to just pick and choose whatever I want because there's no picker or chooser, unless I pick my nose and then somebody's got to do it.
So is it the attitude in which those projections are received?
You mean for me or for you?
For anyone.
Well, you're not just anyone, are you? How did you receive it? What did I just do there?
Michael Bine, recently, when I have thoughts like that and I see them happen, it can be very upsetting or frustrating.
You know what to call that, don't you? Awareness. The awareness is the most important part rather than upsetting or frustrating. Just include that. You can do it. You have ears. You have nose, tongue, body, mind. Everything you have is a receiver. The mind does not produce thoughts. I know it looks like it. Sorry to disappoint you. You think? I don't think so. There's no thinker. The thinking comes out of dependent origination. And if you realize what that is, consciousness is liberated. And you don't care if you live or die, because you know that you can't be stopped. You cannot come to an end because you've never started. If you think you've started, then you're going to come to an end. If you're identified with this body mind that thrives on spaghetti and meatballs or whatever, then you're going to go down with this. The consciousness will go down. Consciousness is not a thing. So, as it's sometimes been said, if you die before you die, you won't have to die when you die. Simply put. Heard that before? No? I saw the grin on your face. I thought maybe you might have written that. No? Okay. I like Eric's tattoo, sooner or later, isn't that it? I like that. Especially if it doesn't point to anything, just sooner or later. I like that. Go ahead.
Michael Bowling, how would one die before they die?
It's dead. It's dead. Who you thought you were, the consciousness that was animating the self, thought there was somebody who could get somebody somewhere, lose something, get ahead, fall behind. It's gone. There's no self anymore. There's no self in this content. It's form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just is not real. So from the point of view of what this is, you're no longer alive. This doesn't mean the feelings don't arise, but there's no one that has the feeling. The feeling is dependently arisen. Pratitya samutpada is a fancy Sanskrit word for dependent origination. And then there's all the other fancy ideas about consciousness from the Yogacara tradition, the eighth consciousness, the alaya, the seventh, or the paranoid mind, the sixth, or the processing part of the mind, and then the first five. Those are all receivers. Of course, they spit at each other now and then. More? Let's keep going. I like the questions.
Michael Bowling, it just seems to me that it's an
Wait. It just seems to you.
I know I'm going to sound stupid.
No, I didn't say that. I just want to make sure that your preamble, the preamble builds up what you're about to produce. So please continue. It seems to me, go ahead.
That it's based on an assumption that we know what death is.
Yeah, I'll go with that. And we do know what death is until it shows up on our what's it called, threshold. So the pictures that are on the altar of people and some little animals too, who have passed away recently. And what are we doing by having a 49-day bardo? Who knows what? I don't know, maybe 38 days. Maybe there is no bardo. I don't care. It's about intention. It's about intention. This is your world because you are nothing but consciousness only, even though you're appearing as a man. Go ahead.
How do we not hide out from the truth?
See that you're hiding. But don't come up with some kind of a strategy for not hiding. Just see that you're hiding. This is why it's necessary to have a teacher. I may be your teacher, I may not be. I don't know. I don't care. I don't need more students. I've got plenty. Probably a couple dozen. That's enough. You have to watch the consciousness that is either not hiding out or is hiding. Any position, even my position of rotating my hand, or one hand is down and one hand is up. And any position I take in terms of my speech or what I'm saying, all comes out of one thing. So use a number. It's the one that's straight line. One thing looks like the letter I without a dot or with a dot. And that's the vow, to be with all things. It won't do it for you, but without it, I don't know if you can transcend this. I don't know if you can see the truth in this world. You'll go down with their pile of flesh into the dirt, into the fire. Is that bad? Not really. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's not incorrect. It's not further duality. What is it? Find out what it is so you can see the truth yourself, not just say, look over here and think I see something you don't. You won't be able to see what I see. You have to see what you see. And that's why it's so spooky. It's hard to be alone. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, sir?
Does belief continue to be a wall if we see it?
If you think you're hanging on to beliefs about things, if you see that you're believing things, yes, continue. Because there's a believer. So that's why I'm endeavoring to point you towards the belief so that you can, not so you can get rid of the belief, because I don't care if I believe some things and I don't believe other things, but it's very situational. But there's no believer there. And in order to find the no believer, you have to first look at the beliefs. I believe this, I don't believe that. I think this, I don't think that. That seems to be true. That it's just a tilt-a-whirl. It's just going around and around and around, and it's right and it's wrong. It's right and it's wrong. It's up and it's down. It's night and it's day. It goes from one equinox to the next.
Does seeing a belief mean concluding that what's showing up as a belief?
Well, that's part of it. That's a very simple situation. But it's worse than that, because that's beginning to work on it from the point of view of trying to give up a point of view. Can't really give up a point of view because there is no one. The primary illusion is that there's somebody, subjectivity, and the other illusion is there's something else. It's called duality. And it just goes way back, way before Buddhism. We're talking about this in different places. Some places it's even recorded in the Upanishads. Different places, probably in indigenous people, a lot of indigenous people, because they're so close to the dirt. They haven't built castles in the sky or tried to enslave others. I don't know that for some kind of a fact, but it's something I believe. Go ahead.
What does it mean to see the belief beyond the conclusion?
To see that there's something believed in beyond what you've concluded about it? I'm just trying to get close to what you're asking me. Is that what you're asking me?
I think so.
What does he want to know? Let's go there.
Do I have to go beyond concluding that something is a belief?
No. Just have to see it. And then it'll take its own sweet time. If it needs to fall away, it will. If it's not time for that to fall away, it won't. When I say it's not time, it's out of your hands. Well, on the one hand, it's out of your hands. On the other hand, it's out of your hands. It's out of your hands. There are no hands. This is an illusion. Unreal. See them? Unreal. Present. The main issue, as far as what we're talking about here, is the believer. But going to trying to stop the believer or get rid of a believer or see that there is no believer is just it's circular. You don't have to, and you can't get rid of an illusion. That's why they call them illusions, because they continue to return, because they're unreal, they're illusory, but we're deluded by them. Make some sense on some level? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't want to help you too much. This is why the spiritual path is so challenging and so difficult. Well, I don't know about other traditions, but I know about this one, that it's difficult. And it's easy for someone to just practice for 10, 20 years. And if they do not realize that, they'll just kind of conclude that this must be their realization. Don't do that. Okay? Look at it 20 years from now. You've been practicing how long? 6 years? 5 years? Okay. No, that's not very long. I'm not saying you couldn't realize your true nature in 5 years, practicing as much as you do, which is quite a bit. That's very unlikely. I didn't have any clue, particularly other than conceptually, what was going on here for the first 3 decades of pretty intense practice. Does that mean I have a clue now? I'm clueless. I couldn't teach if I had a clue. I'd still be just looking at clues. More?
What does it mean to see the believer rather than just the conclusion that there's a believer?
Well, you won't see anyone. If you do, then that's the believer. So then it gets confusing, because then you can come to the conclusion that you've just seen that there's no believer. It's not going to work. You cannot figure it out. You cannot calculate it, figure it out. Philosophers, incredibly intelligent men and women down through the centuries, have tried to figure this out using logic. I can name them off, but you could name them off too. It can't be calculated or figured out. It has to be seen, not just the eyes, but eyes, nose, tongue, body, feel, mind. They don't produce anything. They just receive. If they're producing anything, confusion. That doesn't mean your vocal cords will stop working, but it might go on pause for a few years when you realize that everything you say is a lie. I saw your eyebrow move slightly. Does that mean you came to a contusion, concussion, confabulation, contortion? What was that other word? Where's Chokadawa? He didn't come? Chokadawa, where are you? Should be ashamed of himself. Not coming. Shouldn't he? Well, welcome. Is there a further question? Chisho, do you have a question?
If belief is also another thought, why is this thought more special than so many other thoughts that come up when we are just aware? Bye.
I'm not sure. I follow the question, but I'm not sure what it is you're looking at for me to respond to. What do you want me to respond to?
So as I'm sitting facing the wall, lots of thoughts come up.
Yes.
I don't know if they're beliefs. Maybe some of them are beliefs. I don't know. So my question is, in the practice then, do we look for beliefs? Do we look for thoughts that look like beliefs?
No.
That's the question. Bye.
What I would say, to come back around to just awareness practice, shikantaza, sit down, hold still, as you've heard me say it hundreds of times, sit down, hold still, and watch the movement of the mind, or movement in the body, or movement in the musculature and nerve endings, eardrums, taste, all of those. Receive. And whatever arises in the mind, receive it just like you're tasting something in your mouth. Receive it the same way. Don't produce. And when I say don't produce, I know you can't help it. But then you get to watch the production in the same way you would watch the reception. You watch what's showing up in as a reaction or an agreement or a disagreement with whatever's showing up. You just watch those. And in this way, consciousness has a possibility, a potentiality of finding its own form, which is what? Consciousness only. As long as there's some kind of a looking for something else, then it creates that circularity. And then we tie into what the Buddha's basic teaching was to start with: life is suffering. And why? We want something else. If you get the piece of pie, you want more. Or you don't want that, you want rhubarb, you don't want cherry pie. If your partner functions in a certain way and they don't function exactly like you think they should, their karma is completely showing up as them. And yet you take exceptions to how they're acting, how they talk, what they say, what they're doing. Same thing with the thought forms that come up in the mind. when we're facing the wall, just receive. Whatever shows up, receive. Negative thoughts, receive. Positive thoughts, neutral thoughts. Receive, receive, receive. Difficult. In this way, the boundary between meditation and post-meditation starts to collapse. All the boundaries start to come apart. The boundary between yourself and others does two things. It becomes obvious that there isn't anything else, and it becomes obvious that everything out there is your projection. That doesn't mean it's suddenly wonderful and friendly. It could be more intense. You project this world. It's not out there. The out there-ness is an aspect of it, but the fundamental understanding is not separate from it. Yes.
Is any thought that shows up a wall?
No, thoughts are fine. It's what we do with the thought. Just try to stop it. Try to embellish it, add to it, change it around so it's closer to what aligns with our preconceptions about what should be, what shouldn't be. Something we can do anything with, including not look at it. This is why I don't teach, even though I practiced it for many, many years and taught it. I don't teach shamatha vipassana or shine laktam. I teach shikantaza because then whenever you sit, if you need to do something called shine or following the breath, you'll do it. Breath is moving, you can watch that. It's the fixation on things that tries to create some kind of a meditator person that is more clear. It's basically spiritual materialism. Trungpa Rinpoche knew that when he was teaching that people would have to break through that at some point. He also knew that they didn't have to break through it for 10 or 20 years, at least. And he was gone by then. So now what do we have? Longchenpa. What do we have? Bankei Otaku. What do we have? Other teachers that teach this, the direct pointing at this, which is what he taught to me. Something else? Don't mind if I meow, do you?
Susan bowing.
But Susan.
Sokuzan, so is it fear that keeps us from seeing what this is? Is that the problem? Bowing.
Yes. Now, simply put, it's fear of what, the unknown, or fear of oblivion, or fear of death. It's fear. But if you find out who you are, you see that you can't die. I mean, everything can die. Your body's dying. These plants are dying. Especially the one I called Philip Kapleau, dead already. Of course, Philip Kapleau is also passed on. He's quite a good teacher, though. 3 Pillars of Zen. Wrote that, I think, in the 60s. So yes, it's fear. And the fear can show up in different ways. If you meet someone, which we've all met someone who's extremely aggressive and finger pointing and blaming someone else for however they feel, or various things. It isn't always that. It could be something where it's really accurate. They did slam into your car or something because their foot slipped off the brake and they ran. They were trying to park so you're mad at them because they had an accident, perhaps. So and the anger that comes up there is fear. It's fear-based. And do we have to get rid of fear? No, we just have to receive the fear so that we can look more deeply and see what is it that we're afraid of. And then as we do that, we say, well, who's actually afraid? And if you find out who you are, you'll see there's no one there. So the fear is dependently risen. Fear may still arise in your mind stream, but it will not find fraidy cat anywhere. You won't find anybody who's afraid. So what does it do? It hangs around, maybe tortures you for 20 minutes. You're afraid, you're afraid. Come on, fess up, you're afraid. Come on, you're afraid. And it can be worse than that. It can be 3 or 4 days of being afraid, but still can't find someone who's afraid. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. If you have to, and I'm not saying you have to, But if it comes up where you can't do anything about it, then just be afraid. Don't object, don't agree, don't look away, don't object. Don't agree, don't look away. Any of those kinds of grasping, those are all grasping. Grasp, wanting something else, wanting something different. Be genuine. Be the shit you're trying to get rid of, at least for 20 minutes, rather than immediately putting it somewhere. So that way you get to become very acquainted with what is happening in your mind stream.
Shoto bowing, is a belief in a self the same thing or similar to belief in a past and future? Bowing?
Yeah, it's just it's really unexamined. The feeling is in my body, mind. These are my eyes, my nose. And she said, he said, they said, or whatever happened. And now I'm feeling terrible because of this or that. Well, I wasn't feeling that way until they acted this way or did this or did that. But the emotions that come up, as I started saying this years ago, and I don't know how effective it is to help somebody, but nobody came along and poured a bucket of emotions in you. They are yours, the ego, but you're this particular manifestation of a human being. They're yours. You came up, you brought this from beginning of time until the present moment. Not talking about past lives. We could talk about that if you wanted to. You don't even need that. You've been here forever. We all have. And there is no forever. There's just this always. It just changes. What is changing is just the illusion. But what this is doesn't do anything. See it yourself. See it. It's not a conclusion. Suffering may not go away. But you're not concerned with that. But your only concern, if you're listening to what I'm saying, is the truth. What is the truth? Yes, sir.
Erica, does belief imply demand for permanence?
A little bit of that. It could be that way. You don't have to look at that anymore. Then you believe that. Like if you believe in, even if you believe in Buddhism, you believe in the Buddha or chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo forever. I'm not saying that's wrong. Maybe that's the only way you could practice. I would not go in and criticize anybody's practice, whether it was Buddhism or Christianity or Taoism or Hinduism, Jehovah's Witnesses. They all have some kind of an idea about how to work with this, some kind of chemistry. A lot of it doesn't make any sense to me, but I don't know. I haven't practiced it, so I don't know. But I have practiced this. More?
Under bowing, does fear actually exist? Bowing?
Well, it exists insofar as anything that arises in consciousness has an existence. It's just that it's unreal because it's not only unreal in the consciousness, but it's unreal from the point of view of the causes and conditions. There's something will trigger it if you're running down an alleyway and somebody's chasing you and you think they're going to hurt you and you're afraid, then that's just dependent origination. Doesn't mean there isn't an actual person there who's actually a bad person that gets rid of their suffering by torturing others. There probably is. It's dependent origination. But that doesn't let you or anything off the hook. You still have to see it. Did I get close to what you're looking for or something else?
The bowing is it the part of the illusion of the dream, this dream bowing?
Yeah, it is. Chisho.
As I'm sitting facing the wall, say I hear a sound. When does the process or whatever of belief start? If I'm just observing the sound, just the recognition of the sound itself is a belief, is it? But
A little bit. So I'm not trying to, when I say this, I'm not trying to get rid of all beliefs. There's lots of them that just come and go that have to do with just having hands and arms and time for lunch. And there's a bird, one of the 16 songs that a cardinal sings. Is it 16? Yeah. Who told us that?
Google.
Google told us that. Thank you, Google. So it's not that there isn't something there that's some kind of belief happening, and that's something that's not going to go away. It doesn't need to go away. Nothing needs to go away. You just have to see what this is. And that's so, and it's not an experience. If it's an experience, it will fade. If you think you're enlightened, you misunderstood. If you think you're not enlightened, you're probably correct. No, you've actually misunderstood that, because to think that you would know or not know is the fuel for the self-centeredness, the ego, the narcissism of the mind. It's worse than that, and it's better than that. It's worse than that because it's absolute devastation to the ego. It's devastating. You can't get any help. The teacher, he, she, they, if they see you're headed that way, they are not going to bail you out. They may even kick you. But if you're not ready for that, then they may come and pamper you or kiss you and hug you and love you and take care of you and promise you everything is going to be okay. They probably won't do much promising. I didn't get much help from Goban. He abandoned me, as far as I was concerned at the time, for years. But did he do that? No. He was my teacher. I would not be here for him. More?
Is it helpful to look for the believer when the belief arises?
You could do that. Similar to Ramana Maharshi's practice for his students, Atma Vichara, or self-inquiry. You could look to see who believing something and say, do I believe that? Am I believing that? But that's still path. It's not goal. It's not the fruition. The fruition, nothing happens when there's fruition. There couldn't be, because if there was anything left, then you would still have something happening. It's worse than that, and it's better than that. It's worse than that because it's devastating, and it can be extremely scary when you get to the edge of that abyss, the edge of that dark forest. Go in anyway. Go in anyway. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Don't take a gun with you. And it's better than that because you're liberated. What's liberated? Something that was never in prison. Complete liberation. If you're interested, perhaps I can help you. Perhaps I can't. Mahesh, I'll come back to you.
Mahesh Bowing. There was an experiment conducted where psychedelics were given on the last day of session, and
Which ones? Which ones? What were they?
I think it's
psilocybin.
What is it?
Psilocybin, LSD.
It's Vanya Palmer's. I think he conducted some experiment in Switzerland. Sorry.
Muscaria. Amanita muscaria.
So my question is, is it a good thing to take something like that?
Don't take it. But when I say don't take it, don't do anything unless you have to. But if you have to do that, I'm not against. I'm for very little, and I'm not against very much. But so I want to be respectful of what you're going through, what Juzan goes through, what Eric goes through, what everyone in here is going through. So I don't want to corral everybody into this. Sometimes people look at this situation, if they come here, they think this is a cult. I don't think so. Find somebody here who's obeying any orders. Nobody's obeying. Everybody agrees to follow the forms, or they don't. So when you come back to something like that, I would try to talk to somebody who knows a little bit about that. There are therapies that deal with that. I've not taken any of them. I've done a lot of drugs, but that was many centuries ago when I was doing drugs. You have a particular question?
Mahesh Bowing. So according to them, when you take the psychedelics, the transformation that happened in the experimental group was far better than the control group. So, but I'm wondering, like, our karma or like our karmic conditioning based on that is our spiritual evolution is based on that. So is it bypassing when you take psychedelics like this? Bowing.
I can see where your questions comes from, but I don't necessarily think so. But I also wouldn't promote that. But if you meet somebody who you trust and you think has a lot of understanding and their experience is something that magnetizes you in some way, and they want you to take whatever, ayahuasca, or there's so many of them. And anytime you meet somebody, they're quite often, not all the time, but quite often there's quite a bit of promotion going on. This is it, or whatever. That may mean something to you, but you may not have the karma that you have. The karma that I have is so different, so completely, astonishingly different than when you take something that looks like, it's just like if you have a Budweiser and I have a Budweiser, you have 15 Budweisers and I have 15 Budweisers, you may get really drunk, but I may not. Now, do you follow me? I'm saying some people can't do that. And then so I would say a similar thing may apply to, ayahuasca or other things. The people that I've talked to that have taken ayahuasca have not only different situations every time, but difference from one person to the next. And I'm not saying it's not helpful. It may be in some ways. I think another one that I've heard of recently is I'm just going here because it's showing up from somebody I talked to recently that had to do with it's 4 initials. Can anybody tell me what?
DMT?
Huh?
DMT?
Yeah. Is it DMT?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Is that
MDMA.
Huh?
MDMA.
MDMA. Okay. That's the one where people do it to party down. Right? Yeah. But in this situation, you sit in front of somebody and you don't party down. You put on a mask and you take this hallucinogen, basically, is my understanding of it, and you hallucinate this so that instead of just using it as a heightened sense situation that you party down with or enjoy, you use it to go inside. So am I for that or against it? I don't know. I haven't done that yet. I may never do it. I may do it and I may not. I don't know. I don't make decisions anymore. I don't have to. It's really quite a relief. If you're struggling with a decision about anything, I feel so sorry for you. You don't have to make decisions. If you just have some, what's the conventional word, have some patience, you'll see exactly what you need to do next. You won't be able to help but never come here again. You won't be able to help but move to the monastery immediately. There's a little bit of a contrast there, but I mean, so you won't, if you really wait and look at what's happened, what's showing and what's going away and what's showing up and going away, then it'll be clear to you what you need to do next and what you won't need to convince your neighbor or your mom. I really have to do this. You just will do it. Mahesh, any more? Mahesh, are you there? It doesn't look like Mahesh is moving. There he is.
No questions. Thank you.
Really? There are no questions after all that? So come on, tell me what the drug was.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It is psilocybin, PSILO.
Psilocybin, mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that something I'm getting ready to take? No, actually, it's someone who's helping me do microdosing in that to help me with my skin feels like I have a perpetual sunburn. So I haven't done it yet, but that's something I'm seriously considering doing to see if I can't back off the pain there. Does anybody here have any experience with microdosing of psilocybin? No, just
Greg Bowing. Yes,
Greg, I knew you would know. I knew it. I was even going to call on you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, like you say, it's different for everybody. To me, I don't take psilocybin and psychedelics as seriously as everybody else does. I did when I was a young man. Now I just take psilocybin to have fun, and it's just like a nice ride. It could be that by microdosing, you'll get happy and forget about your skin condition. It could also be that you won't be able to think about anything else but your skin condition.
Oh,
It's dependently arisen, as you would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Craig. And my last time I took psilocybin has got to be 35, 40 years ago. I don't know. I don't even remember, but I remember that it was fun. So I don't know. Anyway, I'll let you know, or maybe I will, maybe I won't. Chisho.
I do have a question based off of what Mahesh related. So they have figured out how to measure progress on the spiritual path? Well,
Is that question for Mahesh? Go ahead, Mahesh. Speak to him in Sanskrit, though, so we can't understand what you're saying.
Mahesh Bowing, I think the person who told me this, they mentioned that he's also a teacher. He mentioned that the ego, how the ego dropped, and then and some of the changes related to that, the transformation between the experiment and control group. And after 8 years, one of them became an abbot of a temple also. So I don't know the full details. There's a movie on that. Yeah.
Well, the way I would possibly, I don't know if you call it disagreeing, take a little exception. The ego does not have to drop. Ego is unreal. If you've gotten rid of your ego, then you've just gotten a stronger ego. You can't get rid of an illusion. You can't. You can't. So there's no. And if someone has taken this and become an abbot of the temple, that's really no. I'm the abbot of the temple. I've never taken any of that stuff. I just snuck in the back door. I looked really good. I had a purple robe, so that's why I'm here. So again, not to make light of that, I think there are probably lots of ways to work with this. I think I've heard stories about ayahuasca also. They're quite astonishing, the things that can happen in consciousness when some kind of another substance is introduced into it. But we don't even know what aspirin is really doing in our body, and we have scientific reports. And Chisho, you're a retired chemical engineer. What do you think about all this chemical stuff? You don't?
I agree that it's, we don't know. Especially when it comes to these such subtle forms of cause and effect. It's just outright impossible. In fact, I shared that article with the SokukoJi group. There was a bet taken by between a philosopher and a group of scientists who said they will figure out how consciousness works. 25 years later, the scientists lost the bet and gave a big crate of wine to the philosopher. And they took a double or nothing bet for another 25 years that they won't be able to figure it out.
Yeah, it can't be figured out because it's not a problem. It's not there's nothing there to figure out. It's the closest word that comes to this in the teachings is shunyata, or emptiness. It's empty of anything you think about it, because a consciousness, there's not thousands of consciousnesses. This situation that we're in is arising in consciousness. Consciousness isn't arising in us. That's like, you're seeing, you're hearing. Consciousness is microdosing on your mind. That's what's happening. It gives you the feeling that you're somebody. Whoop-de-doo. I couldn't do this if I thought it was something. There was a time when I thought I was somebody. I was terrified of sitting in front of a group of people and knowing that all the thoughts going through your mind were all judging me. Is that right? Michael, are you judging me? Okay. You're judging me. Yes. How's it going? What are you coming up with? No?
Don't have anything.
Don't have anything? Okay.
Nothing noteworthy.
Nothing noteworthy. Okay. When you get something noteworthy, I need to be the first to hear about it. Is there a final question from anyone here before we go off in the distance? Yes, sir.
Michael Bowing, if it seems like consciousness is local to a specific body, how is that not a self?
Well, it is a self. It's just that it has no say-so. Of course, that's why it's so damn convincing. I'm here and I'm raising my arm. Raise your arm. I just raised that arm. You heard me tell you to do it. That's called a dictator. You have to be very, because if you think you're somebody, you're going to think somebody else is somebody. And when they tell you to do something, I mean, that's a simple one there, but that's how it works. We get the craziness on the political scene, and it's just astonishing what people will give up in order to have follow some kind of a leader. It's astonishing. There's no self, nor is there not a self. The polarity is what confuses us. We think that we have to get rid of the ego. No, not at all. Okay, I guess we can retaliate. No, not retaliate. Retire.
Hi, I'm Senshu, one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan offers his wisdom tirelessly with complete love and devotion. If you value these teachings, Sokuzan, the mandala of SokukoJi, please consider donating at sokukoji.org. Thank you.